Mr. President, it is my high honor to introduce and present the junior senator from the state of California and Howard University alumni, Kamala D. Harris, to receive at your hand the degree, Doctor of Humane Letters.
It is my distinct pleasure and honor, and by the power vested in me by the Board of Trustees, to present the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters to the Honorable Kamala D. Harris. We will make sure that we get your hood. A lifelong public safety and civil rights leader, U.S. Senator Kamala D. Harris was the first African American and first woman to serve as Attorney General of California, and the second African American woman to be elected to the United States Senate in history. Throughout her career as a prosecutor, Harris was a tireless advocate for the most voiceless and vulnerable Californians. As California's Attorney General, Harris prosecuted transnational gangs exploiting women and children and trafficking in guns and drugs, and led comprehensive studies on the impacts of criminal organizations and human trafficking in California. Harris has worked extensively to protect children and students. She established the California Bureau of Children's Justice and fought to reduce elementary school truancy so that every California child can exercise his or her constitutional right to an education. As Attorney General, Harris successfully sued predatory for-profit colleges, scamming students and veterans. Throughout her career, Harris has been a leading advocate for innovation and reform in the criminal justice system. Harris served 2 terms as District Attorney of San Francisco. Defeating a 2-term incumbent, she was first elected DA in 2003 and was overwhelmingly elected to a 2nd term in November 2007. Harris began her career in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, where she specialized in prosecuting child sexual assault cases. As I said to her last night, the last time we had a senator of color speak at a Howard event, the next time he appeared here, he was the President of the United States. I'm just saying. Born in Oakland, California, Harris is a graduate of the Howard University, America's oldest historically black university. She received her law degree from University of California, Hastings College of Law. She's married to Doug Emhoff, who's here, and I want to introduce him. Thanks for joining us. Her sister Maya is here as well. I want to thank you for coming, and your husband. And so without further ado, I present to you the oratrix for the 149th Commencement address here at the Howard University, the Honorable Kamala D. Harris, United States Senator from the state of California.
Oh, it's good to be home. It's good to be home. Greetings, Bisons. President Frederick, members of the board, distinguished faculty, thank you for this incredible honor. And to the class of 2017, congratulations. And to your families and friends who encouraged you and held you up, thank you for all you did. Let's hear it for them. Now, I've had the honor of speaking at many commencements, but this one is particularly special for me because decades ago, I sat just where you sit now, feeling the embrace of our Howard family. And a family at its best shares common values and aspirations. A family shares hardships and a connected history. A family looks for ways to support and inspire one another. Our family includes a young woman who worked her way through school and is graduating as a published poet, Angel Dye. Our family includes the 4th Rhodes Scholar in Howard's history, Cameron Clark. It includes a woman who got elected to an advisory neighborhood commission at 18 years old, the youngest elected official in DC history, and she is your HUSA president, Allison Carpenter. And our family also includes those who came before you graduates. Thurgood Marshall, Zora Neale Hurston, Shirley Franklin, Dr. LaSalle Lafall, Mr. Vernon Jordan, and Ta-Nehisi Coates, Elijah Cummins, and Mayor Kasim Reed. And now, graduates, you are ready to join the ranks. So you are finally at your commencement, and I want you to look around and capture this moment. Hold it in your heart and hold it in your mind. You are now looking at people you will read about for the trailblazing work they will do. You are looking at the faces of friends who will one day ask you to godparent their children. You may even be looking at someone you'll grow your family with if one or both of you don't know it right now. It's gonna happen. And graduates, also, look back on the experiences you've already had. Remember those first days on the yard, moving into the quad and Drew. Learning how to navigate that Howard runaround so you could get that dorm room or sign up for a class. I know. Remember, or even maybe try to forget, all those late nights at Founders and those other late nights at the Punch-Out or El Rey. And above all, remember you are blessed. Because wherever you came from, you now have the gift, the great, great gift of a Howard University education. And you are also part of a legacy that has now endured and thrived for 150 years. Endured when the doors of higher education were closed to Black students. Endured when segregation and discrimination were the law of the land. Endured when few recognized the potential and capacity of young Black men and women to be leaders. But over the last 150 years, Howard has endured and thrived. Generations of students have been nurtured and challenged here and provided with the tools and the confidence to soar. Since this school was founded in 1867, Howard has awarded more than 120,000 degrees. It has prepared and produced thousands of Black lawyers and doctors, artists and writers, dentists and pharmacists, social workers and engineers. And most recently, Howard has even partnered with Google to bring more Black students into the technology industry. And it certainly prepared me for a career in public service, starting with my first ever political race, which was for freshman class representative of what was then called the Liberal Arts Student Council. So at this moment, when voices at the highest level of our government seem confused about the significance and even the constitutionality of supporting an HBCU, I say, look over here at Howard University. So graduates, now, you are all official members of what I call the Role Model Club. And it's a pretty exclusive club. It includes my distinguished fellow commencement honorees. It includes the members of the class of 1967 who today celebrate their 50th anniversary and who marched and fought for justice when Jim Crow was still the law of the land. And it includes people like Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall. Who were among my and your inspirations for going to law school. History has proven that each generation of Howard graduates will forge the way forward for our country and our world. And now, graduates, it is your turn. And let's look at the world you are now entering. You are graduating into a very different time than it was when you arrived a few short years ago. You are graduating into a time when we see a revival of the failed war on drugs and a renewed reliance on mandatory minimum prison sentences. A time when young people who were brought to America as children fear a midnight knock on their door. A time when throwing millions of working people off their health insurance to give tax breaks to the top 1% is considered a victory to some. A time when we worry that a late-night tweet could start a war. A time when we no longer believe the words of some of our leaders and where the very integrity of our justice system has been called into question. Graduates, indeed, we have a fight ahead. And it's not a fight between Democrats and Republicans. It's not rich versus poor or urban versus rural. This is a fight to define what kind of country we are. And it's a fight to determine what kind of country we will be. And it's a fight to determine whether we are willing to stand up for our deepest values. Because let's be clear, we are better than this. And you know what I'm talking about. From the time you all arrived on this campus, you participated in the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And you students have joined that fight for justice. You've protested from the streets of Ferguson to the halls of the United States Congress. You have lived the words of James Baldwin. There is never time in which in which we will work on our salvation. The challenge is in the moment, and the time is always now. Indeed, the time is always now. And because you are a Howard graduate, the bar is high, which means you must be on the front line, and you must be at the front of the line. You must be the first to raise your hand. You must lead. The motto of this university, Veritas et Utilitas, truth and service. And I know sometimes we're all afraid of falling short. It's not that we don't know what we should do. It's that the bar can sometimes feel so high. It takes so much time and effort to reach it, so much sweat and so many tears. And being human, we sometimes fall short, and that's okay. But because you went to Howard University, you have a responsibility to keep reaching for that bar and to keep serving. So class of 2017, proud members of the Role Models Club, in these unprecedented times, you must ask, how will I serve? How will I lead? So I've got 3 pieces of advice on how to answer that question. Reject false choices, speak truth, and you don't need a big title to make a big difference. So let's talk about each of these. First, to lead and thrive, you must reject false choices. Howard taught me, and it has taught you. You can do anything, and you can do everything. At Howard, you can be a football player and a valedictorian. You can be a budding computer scientist and a poet. You can have a 4.0, intern on the Hill, and still find time to darty on the weekend. Back in the day, I'd go down to the National Mall to protest the United States investment in apartheid South Africa. And I interned in the United States Senate. I chaired the Economic Society, I was on the Howard debate team, and I pledged my dear sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha. In fact, several of my line sisters are here with us this afternoon. So the notion of rejecting false choices that Howard taught us has carried me throughout my career. First as the District Attorney of San Francisco, as the Attorney General of California, and now as the United States Senator. And in my career, the conventional wisdom was that people were either soft on crime or tough on crime, but I knew we should be smart on crime. I was told prosecutors don't need to focus on recidivism. People said, that's not your job, just keep locking folks up. But as DA, I launched an initiative to help first-time offenders re-enter society and not go back to prison. I was told prosecutors should not focus on the needs of children. But we created a Bureau of Children's Justice that took on elementary school truancy. So graduates, I share all of this with you to make the point that there is no limit to what you can do, and that you must always detect and reject false choices. You can advocate for environmental justice, and you can be a CEO who commits to cutting your company's carbon footprint. You can march for workers on a picket line, and you can be their voice inside of the Department of Labor. You can call for greater diversity in the arts and entertainment, and you can be, like Howard's own Tariji P. Henson, on the screen bringing to life those hidden figures. You can march for Black lives on the street, and you can ensure law enforcement accountability by serving as a prosecutor or on a police commission. Because the reality is, on most matters, somebody is going to make the decision. So why not let it be you? Because if we're going to make progress anywhere, we need you everywhere. And sometimes, to make change, you've got to change how change is made. So do not be constrained by tradition. Do not listen when they say it can't be done. And do not be burdened by what has been when you can create what should be. Like James Baldwin said, the time is always now, so no false choices. My second piece of advice is that you must speak truth. And let me be clear, speaking the truth is different from telling the truth. Telling the truth means separating fact from fiction. The earth is round. The sky is blue. Howard University is the real HU. Speak the truth. But unlike telling the truth, speaking the truth means you must speak up and you must speak out, even when you're not being asked, and even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. So let me give you an example. Just a few years ago, after I left Howard, I was working as a prosecutor during the crack epidemic of the 1990s. And it was the height of gang violence in Los Angeles. And California had passed these laws that were known as gang enhancement laws, which meant longer sentences if a person was affiliated with a gang. And because these laws were new, prosecutors were trying to figure out how to prove these cases in court. So one day I was sitting in my office at the courthouse, and I heard my coworkers outside of my door talking. And they were talking about how they were going to prove certain people who were arrested were gang affiliated. And so I listened to this conversation, and I heard them mention the neighborhood where the arrest had occurred. I heard them talking about the way folks were dressed at that location. I heard them talking about what kind of music they were listening to. And hearing this conversation from my office, I knew what I had to do. So I stepped out of my office, and I looked at them, and I said, hey guys, you know that corner you're talking about in that neighborhood? Well, I have people who live there. You know the clothes that you were talking about that they were wearing? My family members dress like that. And that music, and now I'm about to date myself, well, that music, I have a tape of that music in my car right now. And in case you were wondering, the tape was of Oakland's own Too Short. And so they looked up at me a little embarrassed, but needless to say, they realized that they needed to think differently about who does what and who does what where. So Howard encourages us and expects us to use our voice. And I promise you, graduates, as you leave this place, I promise you, you will often find that you are the only one in the room who looks like you. You will often find you are the only one in that room who has had the same experiences you've had. And you are going to feel very alone at that moment. But wherever you are, whether you're in a courtroom, a boardroom, a tech incubator, whether you are in Washington or Wichita, you must remember this. You are never alone. We are all in that room with you every single time, every single day. So the time is now. You must speak the truth. Here's my third piece of advice and final story. You don't need a big title to make a big difference. So after my second year of law school, I was a summer intern at the Alameda County DA's office, and there had been this big drug bust. And I was working on a case, and I realized that among those arrested was an innocent bystander. But it was late on a Friday afternoon, and most people had gone home, which meant the case would not get called until Monday. Now, that meant, of course, that this innocent bystander would have been held all weekend. So I then started to look more into the case, and I learned that she also had young children. Now, no innocent person should spend a weekend in jail. And I knew what it would mean if she couldn't get home, including that she could even lose her children. So I sat right there in the courtroom, And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I told the clerk we had to call the case. And I pleaded for the judge to come back. I would not leave until the judge finally gave in. And when that happened, with the swipe of a pen, this woman got to go home to her children. It would be years before I would run a major prosecutor's office, before I would create policies and write legislation that would be adopted on a state and national level. And I didn't realize it at that time, but that Friday afternoon, in that courtroom in Oakland, California, that woman taught me that when you see something in front of you that's wrong, you can just go ahead and do what you know is right. And it will make a difference, even if nobody but just you and she knows it. So the time is always now. You don't need a big title to make a big difference. So graduates, as you begin this next and so exciting phase of your life, I have one request of you. When you get your diploma, take a good look at it. Remember what's on it: veritas and utilitas, truth and service. That is your duty, the duty of your degree. That is the charge of a Howard graduate. So whatever you plan to do next, whether you want to design the latest app or cure cancer or run a business, whether you're going to be a dentist or a lawyer or a teacher or an accountant, let your guiding principle be truth and service. At a time when there are Americans, disproportionately black and brown men, trapped in a broken system of mass incarceration, speak truth and serve. At a time when men, women, and children have been detained at airports in our country simply because of the God they worship, speak truth and serve. At a time when immigrants have been taken from their families in front of schools and outside courthouses, speak truth and serve. And at a time of incredible scientific and technological advances, when we're dreaming of a mission to Mars and unraveling the mysteries of the brain, and entrepreneurs, even in my home state, are talking about flying cars, speak truth and serve, because we need you, our country needs you, and the world needs you. And as Allison, your HUSA president, said to me, boy, we can't wait till we're in charge. Well, I can't either, and neither can our world. So get out there and do your thing. Your Howard family will always be with you every step of the way. Congratulations, graduates.